I ask you something? If I asked you what you've been carrying recently, what would you say? And I don't mean your shopping, your laptop, and not the washing that still needs to be folded when you get home. I'm talking about the things nobody else sees, the conversation that keeps replaying in your mind, the decision you're still unsure about, the phone call that changed everything, that dream you quietly kept alive, the goodbye you never expected, or perhaps the smile you've worn so convincingly that people stopped asking if you're okay. Two people can cross paths in a street, exchange a polite smile, and continue with their day, never realizing they're both carrying something that's invisible. That's what fascinates me about people. We become remarkably skilled at carrying things without anyone noticing. We tell ourselves we're managing. We reassure others that everything is fine. Sometimes we even convince ourselves until one day the weight reminds us it's still there. I love blank pages, not because they empty, but because they don't judge what's about to be written. Every one of us begins life like this. No map, no script, no certainty about where the journey would lead. Just endless possibility waiting for its first sentence. Some chapters arrive filled with joy. Others test every ounce of our strength that we have. A few becoming turning points we never saw coming. Yet every page, whether we choose to read it again or not, becomes part of that story that shapes us. If your life were written across these pages, where would I find you? Is it standing at the beginning of something new, picking yourself up after you've been knocked down, discovering a strength you never realized you had? Or is it quietly turning a page, hoping the next chapter feels a little kinder than the last? Whatever chapter you're living, keep reading. The story isn't over yet. Not every chapter needs a title where you're living in it. Some only make sense when you look back. You know, there's something else I've realized. We spend so much of our time, so much of our lives asking people, what do you do? Where are you from? How have you been? Perfectly ordinary questions, but very rarely do we ask, what are you carrying? Maybe because we're afraid of the answer, or because we're afraid somebody might ask us the same question. Because this backpack isn't really about the backpack. It's about every life that's ever been lived. And today we're going to open it together. Before we do, I'd like to welcome you to Life in Care podcast. I'm Amy, and this is a place where we have real conversations with real people about the real care. If you're curious and enjoying today's conversation so far, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, give this episode a like, and share your thoughts in the moments. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. Now, let's open this backpack. I wish life stayed like this. A blank notebook, an empty backpack, the belief that anything is possible. When we're children, the world feels enormous. We can't wait to grow up, to drive that car, to have a job, to make our own decisions, to stay up late without having anyone telling us to go to bed. We spend years wishing time would hurry up, only to spend the rest of our lives wondering where it all went. Isn't that strange? As children, we think adults have all the answers. When one day you become one and you realize you're just doing the best that you can with the pages that have been given. Some days they get it right. Other days they simply hoping tomorrow gives them another chance. I think that's called being human. This isn't just a stone. People often call stones burdens, something that's heavy, something that weighs us down. I see it differently. To me, this stone is evidence. Evidence that something mattered, that someone mattered. It's evidence that love was here. If you've ever grieved, it's because you've loved. If your heart has ever been broken, it's because you opened it to someone. If you've ever cried after saying goodbye, it's because there was once a hello that was worth celebrating. The ways isn't there to punish us. It's there to remind us that we had something precious. That's why I don't believe grief is something we get over. I think we grow around it. The stone never really changes. But over time, our hands learn how to carry it differently. Life has a quiet way of adding things to our backpack. Not all at once, almost without us noticing. A setback here, a lesson there, a friendship that reshaped us, a dream that arrived later than we hoped, a moment that took our breath away, another that gave it back. Each one slips inside without asking permission. Before long, the backpack feels familiar, not because it's light, but because we've forgotten what it feels like before we carried it. You know, photographs fascinate me, not because they freeze time, but because they wake it up. One picture can take you back to a place you haven't visited in years. You don't just remember the faces, you remember the laughter, the music, the smell in the room, the weather that day, the feeling that life would always look like this moment. It's amazing how something so small can hold an entire world. I think that's why we struggle to throw certain things away. They aren't just objects, they remind us that a moment once existed, that someone was here, that love was real. Then there are moments that never made it into the photograph. The conversations you wish you had that lasted a little longer. The hug you didn't know would be the last. The words you thought there'd always be time to have or to say. Life doesn't usually tell us when we're making a memory, it only whispers afterwards. This one, I think all of us recognize. An envelope. Sometimes it brings excitement, opportunity, or news that changes everything. Funny, isn't it? The same object can carry hope or break. I've often wondered how many letters were never written, how many apologies stayed locked inside someone's heart, how many I love yous arrived too late, how many thank yous that were never spoken. Maybe today isn't about writing a letter. It's about making that phone call, sending the message, giving that hug, because tomorrow has never been promised to any of us. You know, looking across this table, I don't just see a stone, a photograph, an envelope. I see a life, not a perfect one, not an easy one, a real one, filled with moments that shaped someone into the person that they are today. It's funny, when we started, this hardly weighed anything. Now it just feels a little heavier. Not because of what's inside it, but because of what represents it. And if our backpack can feel heavier after just a few memories, imagine what it feels like after a lifetime. The crazy thing is, most people will never tell you what's inside theirs. They'll simply just keep carrying it. And that's exactly where our journey takes us next. It's getting heavier now, not because we filled it with stones or photographs or memories. It's getting heavier because somewhere along the way, we've started recognizing ourselves in it. Maybe that's what stories do. They quietly introduce us to ourselves. I've often wondered, when did we become so good at pretending we're okay? Not lying, just protecting. We convince ourselves everyone else has enough to deal with already. We don't want to become another worry. So we smile, we change the subject, we tell people we're fine. We tell ourselves we are just tired, really tired. Not the kind of tired that disappears after a good night's sleep, the kind that settles somewhere much deeper, the kind that you carry. And somehow the world keeps moving. The alarm still goes off. The washing still needs doing. Emails still arrive in your mailbox. Meals that still need to be cooked. Life doesn't pause simply because our hearts are feeling heavy. So we adapt, we smile, we answer, I'm fine, and we keep walking. Not because the weight has disappeared, but because we don't think we have any other choice. When was the last time somebody asked you how you were and waited long enough to hear that real answer? Not while walking past, not as a part of a greeting or because it was polite, but because they genuinely wanted to know. I wonder how many people are longing for that question. Not advice or solutions, just someone willing to stay long enough to listen. This elastic band probably doesn't look like much. In fact, most people would throw it away. But I've kept it because it reminds me of something. Life has a way of pulling you in different directions. Work, family, friendships, responsibilities, expectations. Before we know it, we've stretched it so tightly that one more pull feels as though it might be the one that finally snaps. The thing is, most people around us would never know because we've become experts at holding ourselves together. Have you ever noticed what happens when an elastic band has been tied into a knot? Even after you untie it, the mark remains. Life is a little like that. Certain experiences leave an important imprint, not always visible, but always a part of us. Maybe healing isn't about pretending the knot never existed. It's learning not to let it define the whole band. There's another thought I can't seem to shake. We spend so much of our lives trying to appear strong, yet some of the strongest people I've ever met have been the ones willing to whisper three simple words: I need help. That isn't a weakness. It never has been. It takes courage to let someone see behind the smile. It takes trust to say, I'm not managing as well as everybody thinks. And it takes hope to believe that someone will stay after you've said it. I've come to realize that that's why kindness matters so much. You never really know that what someone is carrying before they crossed your lives. The person who seemed impatient, the colleague who was unusually quiet, the stranger who didn't smile back, and the neighbor who suddenly stopped coming outside. Every one of them has a story we haven't been invited to read yet. What if, instead of assuming the worst, we become curious? What if our first thought wasn't, what's wrong with them? But I wonder what they've been carrying today. I have a feeling we'd speak more gently, listen more, judge a little less, and love people a little better. Over the last little while, we've unpacked memories, we've uncovered moments, we've spoken about the things that quietly shape a life. But there's something I haven't told you yet. There are people who choose to step into stories like these every single day. They walk through front doors not knowing what they'll find on the other side. Not because they have all the answers, not because they can take the weight away, but because they're willing to help people carry it for a while. And I think that's where our story is about to go. Can I ask you something? Have you ever stopped to think what it really means to hand somebody the key to your home? Not just the front door, your home. The place where you've celebrated birthdays, argued over dinner, cried where nobody else was watching, and filled every room with memories that belong only to you. That's an incredible act of trust. Every day, thousands of carers are given that privilege, not because they've earned it overnight, because someone has decided, I feel safe with you. That trust should never become ordinary. People often imagine care begins with someone that needs help getting dressed, taking medication, or preparing a meal. From my experience, it starts much earlier than that. It begins the moment a door is opened, the moment someone welcomes you into their world. Every visit is different. Some mornings you're greeted before you've even had the chance to knock properly. Other days you waited a little longer, listening for footsteps and hoping everything is all right. Occasionally the kettle is already boiling and you're met with, "Come in, I've been expecting you." Then there are homes where the silence tells you more than words could ever. You quickly learn that no two front doors lead the same story. One question has stayed with me over the years. Do you treat people living with Alzheimer's differently? My answer has always been simple: no. Because I don't meet Alzheimer's. I meet Margaret. I meet David. I meet Sheila. I meet people. The diagnosis helps me to understand the support someone needs. Conversation teaches me everything else. It tells me what makes them laugh, how they like their morning routine, which song brings back memories, why Sundays have always been special. Those are the details that shape care. Without them, all we're doing is just completing tasks. This probably looks like an ordinary cup of tea. In care, it can become so much more. I've discovered that making a drink is really about the actual drink. It's the reason to sit down, the invitation to slow everything down for 5 minutes. That's often when someone begins talking about the photograph, the mantelpiece, or the holiday they still remember 50 years later. Or maybe even the person that they miss every single day. You realize the tea was never important. The conversation was. Sometimes the greatest gift we offer isn't efficiency, it's our presence. People often ask what carers actually do. Of course, we provide that practical support. That's part of the role. But there are countless moments that never appear on a care plan. Sharing a laugh that nobody else would understand, recognizing that someone isn't themselves before they've spoken a word, celebrating the smallest achievements because to that person it feels enormous, sitting in comfortable silence because company is enough. Those moments don't make headlines. They rarely receive the recognition. Yet, they often the memories families hold on to long after everything else has faded. This watch reminds me that care is measured differently. Not how quickly that visit finishes or how many tasks have been ticked off. The moments people remember are usually impossible to record on a timesheet. The extra few minutes spent listening to someone, the reassurance that you give before you leave, remembering a birthday, noticing a new haircut, calling someone by their name that they've always loved hearing. Small things, lasting impact. Earlier I asked what you might be carrying, but there's another question that's worth asking. What does it feel like to spend your day helping other people carry pieces of their lives while quietly carrying your own? Because carers have backpacks too. They leave one home and travel to the next. Some visits are filled with laughter. Others stay in your thoughts long after you've finished work. You celebrate with families, you grieve with them, you witness remarkable resilience. You also witness heartbreak. and somehow you take a deep breath, knock on another door, and offer the very best of yourself all over again. That isn't because carers are superheroes. It's because they're human. Human beings choosing every single day to stand alongside another person and remind them they don't have to face life alone. To me, that's what care has always been. When we began today, this table was empty. Now look at it. Without really noticing, we've unpacked a lifetime. Not one person's, it's all of ours. It's remarkable how a few ordinary objects can suddenly become extraordinary once we attach a story to them. Maybe that's true of people too. We pass each other every day, seeing only what's on the surface, rarely realizing how much history stands quietly behind a smile. There's something I've learned over the years. Life was never meant to be measured by what we have collected. It isn't the size of the house, the title on your office door, the money in your bank. When people look back, they rarely talk about those things. They remember who sat beside them, the person who made them laugh, who stayed when life became too difficult, who made them feel safe. In the end, it's always the people. When this episode began, this backpack represented life. Now it represents something more, connection. Because every object we have unpacked has one thing in common. Somewhere along the journey, another person became a part of that story. The notebook reminded us there are still pages waiting to be written. The stone reminds us that love always leaves that mark. The photograph proves a single moment can live in our hearts for decades. The envelope quietly asks whether there's something we've been meaning to say. The elastic band reminds us that life's pressures may stretch us, but they don't have to define us. The key represents trust. The mug reminds us that the most meaningful conversations often begin with the simple invite. That invite like, would you like a cup of tea? And then the watch. This watch reminds me that the greatest gift we can ever give another person is our time. Once it's given, we never get it back. Perhaps that's exactly why it matters so much. One by one, the backpack begins to fill again. Not because of the weight and that it's disappeared, but because that's how life works. We don't leave our experiences behind. We carry it with us. The difference is that over time we learn they don't have to be carried alone. Earlier, I asked you a question. What are you carrying? I'm not going to ask you to put your backpack down. Some things deserve to stay with us. The people we've loved, the lessons we've learned, the memories that continue shaping who we are. Instead, I'd like to ask a different question. Who helps you carry it? Because somewhere in every story, there's usually someone who chose to walk beside us. And sometimes it's a carer. Not because carers have all the answers, not because they can erase heartbreak, remove grief, or fix every problem, but because they choose to stand beside another human being and quietly say, you don't have to carry this on your own today. To me, that's what care has always been. Not fixing people, not rescuing people, simply being present. Seeing the person before the diagnosis, the individual before the care plan, the life before the illness. Over the years, there are so many lessons that have stayed with me. One of them is every person I meet is so much more than the first thing I've noticed. They more than their job, more than their diagnosis, the mistakes that they've made, more than the role they play in somebody else's life. Behind every face is a lifetime of experience. Moments of joy, times of heartbreak, dreams that become true. People they've loved and they've lost. Victories nobody has applauded, and the battles nobody knew that they were fighting. Perhaps that's why we should be slower to judge and quicker to understand, because we never meet somebody's whole story. None of us wants to be remembered for the hardest chapter we have lived. We want to be seen for the whole story. So the next time you meet someone, whether it's at the supermarket, work, walking down the street, or sitting quietly beside you, remember this. You'll never know what they are carrying, but you can always choose how you can make them feel. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the moment another person remembers for years to come. Sometimes listening is more powerful than speaking. Sometimes presence says everything words could never. If you're a carer listening today, thank you. Thank you for stepping into other people's stories with compassion, for showing up on the difficult days, for seeing the person behind that paperwork, for helping carrying backpacks that most of the world never even notices. And if today's conversation has encouraged you to look at people with a little more curiosity, a little more patience, and a little more kindness, then every minute we've spent together has been worthwhile. Thank you for unpacking this backpack with me. If today's conversation meant something to you, I'd really appreciate your support. Please subscribe, like this episode, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, or simply tell me, what are you carrying today? Your story might be the reason someone else feels seen. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of one another. And wherever life takes you, never forget, every backpack has a story. Bye for now.